Carved into one of the driest deserts on Earth, over 800 miles of ancient lines stretch across a Peruvian plateau, some forming creatures over 900 feet long. For decades, they have been called proof of alien visitors. But the science tells a very different story. The Nazca lines were first spotted not from a plane, but on foot. In 1927, Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Zespi noticed strange markings while hiking through the foothills near the town of Nazca, about 250 miles south of Lima. He presented his findings at a conference in Lima in 1939, but it was American professor Paul Kosak who brought international attention to the site in 1941. The lines cover a vast area. The Pampas de Humana stretches more than 50 miles between the towns of Nazca and Palpa, and the geoglyphs themselves span roughly 170 to 190 square miles. There are over 70 animal and plant figures, hundreds of geometric shapes, and a combined total of more than 800 miles of lines carved into the desert surface. German-born mathematician Maria Rieke devoted her life to the Nazca lines. She first visited the site with Kosak in 1941 and continued the work alone after he left Peru in 1948. Over the next 5 decades, she mapped the area, identified 18 different types of animals and birds, and campaigned tirelessly for the site's protection. She became known as the Lady of the Lines and was instrumental in securing UNESCO World Heritage status in 1994. One of the most common claims about the Nazca lines is that they can only be seen from the air. This idea fuels the suggestion that the Nazca people must have had access to flight or outside help. After all, why would anyone create artwork that they themselves could never see? But this claim is simply wrong. Research published in 2006, examining hundreds of geoglyphs in the Palpa region, found that they can be spotted from the ground. The surrounding hills and foothills provide clear vantage points. In fact, the earliest geoglyphs were placed on hillsides, specifically designed to be observed from the valleys below. The lines only became famous through aviation because Peruvian pilots drew public attention to them in the 1930s. But the discovery itself happened on foot. A related myth claims that creating such enormous, precise figures would have been impossible without aerial surveillance. How could ancient people draw a roughly 300-foot hummingbird or a 440-foot condor with perfect proportions without ever seeing the complete picture from above? The answer is remarkably simple. Archaeologists have found wooden stakes still in the ground at the ends of some lines, direct physical evidence of the surveying method. The Nazca people created small-scale drawings first, then enlarged them by multiplying measurements into rope lengths. In 1982, researcher Joe Nickel proved this conclusively. With himself and 5 relatives, using only stakes and string, he recreated a 440-foot condor in a Kentucky field. The journal Skeptical Inquirer documented the result as remarkable in its exactness. The alien theory reached mainstream culture through Erich von Daniken's 1968 bestseller, Chariots of the Gods. Von Daniken proposed that the Nazca Plateau was a landing strip for extraterrestrial spacecraft and that the lines were signals to alien beings. He described one geoglyph as showing markings of a modern airport. Believers often point to a figure nicknamed the astronaut, a roughly 100-foot humanoid shape on a hillside, but archaeologists identify it as a simple human figure, consistent with other human depictions in Nazca art. Von Daniken's descriptions contain significant inaccuracies. The supposed airport markings were actually a bird figure's knee joint. Ronald Story's 1976 book, The Space Gods Revealed, provided a thorough refutation, and Maria Rieke herself was a vocal critic of the alien theory throughout her career. So who really made the lines and why? The Nazca civilization flourished on Peru's southern coast from roughly 200 BC to 600 AD. They were skilled artisans known for polychrome pottery, featuring at least 12 distinct colors and technically complex textiles. Their society was organized around priestly authority, with religious leaders directing communal labor. The strongest evidence suggests the lines served as ritual processional paths. Excavations at platforms found at the ends of many figures have uncovered fragments of thorny oyster shells, offerings associated with water ceremonies. In a desert where survival depended on managing scarce water, these rituals were central to Nazca religious life. Later groups continued using the lines, smashing ceramic pots at intersections as part of their own ceremonies. In the 1990s, independent researcher David Johnson proposed that some geoglyphs follow the paths of underground aquifers connected to puquios, ancient aqueducts, some of which still function today. Later, satellite and drone research by Rosa Lasapanara studied the distribution of these puquios across the region and found a thematic connection to the lines, suggesting a deeply practical dimension to what might appear purely ceremonial. The lines have survived for over 2,000 years thanks to a remarkable combination of geological factors. The desert surface is covered with reddish-brown pebbles coated in ferric oxide. Removing this top layer, only 4 to 6 inches deep, exposes lighter yellow-gray subsoil underneath. Extremely low rainfall, a hot, arid climate, and the absence of strong surface winds have kept the grooves intact for millennia. Morning mist even hardens the lime-rich sublayer into a natural protective crust. But this fragile preservation is under threat. In 2014, Greenpeace activists entered the restricted zone and placed promotional banners next to the hummingbird geoglyph, causing damage to approximately 1,600 square meters of the protected area. In 2018, a truck driver drove off the Pan American Highway into the site, leaving deep scars across 3 geoglyphs. And in 2025, Peru briefly reduced the archaeological park's boundaries by approximately 42% before reversing the decision under international pressure, highlighting the ongoing tension between development and preservation. Meanwhile, technology is revealing how much we still have to learn. In 2024, researchers from Yamagata University, working with IBM, used artificial intelligence to discover 303 previously unknown figurative geoglyphs, nearly doubling the known total. The figures include parrots, cats, killer whales, and a 72-foot orca holding a knife. The AI worked 21 times faster than traditional survey methods. In 2025, the same team announced another 248 new geoglyphs. The lines and geoglyphs of Nazca and Palpa were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994, recognized as bearing exceptional testimony to the culture and beliefs of pre-Columbian South America. UNESCO described them as unmatched in their extent, magnitude, and diversity compared to any similar work in the world. The real story of the Nazca lines needs no aliens. A civilization facing drought in one of Earth's harshest deserts created a vast ritual landscape connected to water worship and religious procession. Their work has survived over 2 millennia thanks to a uniquely stable microclimate, and with AI uncovering hundreds of new figures in recent years, we are only beginning to understand the full scope of what the Nazca people built. That is a far more remarkable story than any myth.